Hey, what's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in today's video where we'll paint this still I've seen. I wanted to do something real time because it's been a while, aside from the live streams, that I show you my real struggling and grappling with the process, and I think this is a great example. Don't give up, push forward, fix what needs fixing. It's not too late, you haven't messed up, you just didn't finish the painting. That's kind of the main concepts that led me along while painting this one. So let's get to it. Okay, so I thought I'd do one real time. It's been a while. And let's see how we do here. I'm gonna start with the main shapes. So we have this bag, and I'm gonna try, because real-time videos tend to go a lot longer. So we'll see what I can do. Maybe I will either cut out really boring parts of the process, or I'll just work fast. So we'll see. So I'm trying to get the overall proportions of the bag and the shadow, which are the main, I guess, parts of this painting, or this part of the bag. Now, the beautiful thing about this kind of a subject is you can kind of not be as accurate because it's a bag. It's a random object. What you do want to get right is kind of the overall placements of things. So this is kind of the opening, and I do want to make sure that this looks right. And this part that goes in, and then this part that folds around. And we're gonna use a lot of tricks to convey perhaps these shapes in an interesting way, and in a you know, using watercolor but without painting each and every detail, which is a bit of a challenge, but I think we're up for the task. So let's see here. Ruth wants to leave the room whenever I start talking. It's so funny. So let's get that orange in here, and you see I'm marking some spots where I'm certain that it is, and then once I get all of these, I connect them. I do ghosting, so I'm kind of touching the paper but not really, hovering my hand around it to make sure that I get the right curves. And don't forget, I'm really well trained in these shapes by now, so if it takes you longer, that's perfectly fine. Now, I'm trying to also draw through the shape to see where that other orange is, right? So it's gonna be somewhere here, maybe even a little lower, but that's fine. We can change some things around. So now that we got the main, I suppose, and here's that kind of rounded, what do you call the stem? So once you get the main kind of a thing in, we can start dividing it into smaller shapes and really look at the patterns of light and shadow, right? So, and yeah, my drawing isn't as accurate, but the fun part is, a lot of it is going to rely on the paint, and this is something we've been training to do, you know. I'm sure you have too. I know many people do train themselves to let the paint do most of the work. Let me make the part of me doing these real time is you're just gonna listen to me ramble about making the room cooler, dropping the temperatures on the air condition. So yeah, now so a couple of patterns of light and shadow on the bag. This goes, this actually goes like that, and then this goes in. See these interesting patterns? Again, we're not gonna draw each and every one of them. We'll get the gist of them and then kind of continue. If you would have finalized this in pencil, if I would do that, I'd probably be a little more specific with where I place my lines. But because paint is gonna come over this, then all I need is to know where to paint, you know? This goes here, not here. This is unnecessary. All I really need to know is where the general shapes are, and then I'll let the paint do most of the job, like that. And then we have that shadow on the orange. So there's this part here that's a little dented inwards. So that's gonna be in the shadow. And then we have that other part that is just hidden from the light. So it's gonna be going like that, right? And that'll be I guess, the core shadow. So something like this. There's a shadow going around here. This entire thing almost is in the shadow. So we'll leave a sliver of light. And there's this detail here on the whatever fabric surface this is on, and here. Now I'm gonna paint this black and white because I want to be able to focus on the values. It's not an easy still life subject. It's not like a very straightforward one. A bit of careful work is necessary. But let me map out some of the shadows. So this is gonna be, probably all of this is gonna be in the shadow. Like so. And all of this part of the bag is gonna be in the shadow. Up till here, and then everything on the inside but those highlights on the oranges is going to be in the shadow. something like this. Okay, so you start to see this come to life and kind of look like something. It still doesn't look like much, but it definitely looks like something. So I'm gonna prepare the paint and then we'll move on painting this black and white. So let's get to it, and as I like, my palette is messy and dirty, and that's perfectly fine. So I'm thinking, what colors should I work with, or what color rather, because I'm just gonna use one. Maybe I'll vary it up. I'm gonna use this, I guess that's kind of a Payne's Gray. If you want to follow it closely, I'll write it down on the screen later when I edit this. And because it's not the simplest one, so we have two ways to go. We can either paint something over all of the light and shadow and kind of divide it into light and dark, or we can work by section. It's a good question how I want to approach this. To be honest with you, I'm not sure. Let's try doing dividing this into light and shadow. Okay, let's give it a try. We'll see how that works. I'll have to work fast, and I'll have to create a larger angle here. So here goes, and we'll just get started. Let's see. Because I'm using just this one color, it makes things a little easier. Now for the top, I will try and push this to be as dark as necessary. But after that, it's going to be more about that division between light and shadow. Now, when you're doing this kind of work, I find that I almost turn my brain into a different wavelength, a different mode of being, in which I'm doing a very computer-like work. I'm looking at the value and I'm assessing it. Is it dark? Is it light? I'm constantly doing that. Is it dark? Is it light? I'm asking myself for every area, is it dark? Is it light? That's just what it's all about. Okay, so this is dark, right? And then this actually goes around here and connects to the shadow on the bag itself, like so. And I'm gonna connect it all the way to here. And we're gonna work our way around this. Now, you can't go too dark at this stage because you're running the risk of going over some areas that shouldn't be as dark, right? So you wanna pay attention to that. One thing I did notice is, look at this edge right here. This should be a little blended. And that's gonna contrast beautifully with all of the sharp edges that we're gonna create here. Okay, so sharp edges, due to the nature of the material making up the bag, like that. Cover all of this up. This is part of the shadow, and we'll leave, just for an interesting contrast's sake, I think we'll leave all the bottom white, even though it's not white. We'll leave it like that. Okay, and this is gonna be the shadow. It doesn't make much sense actually, but that's fine. It should be like this, and then maybe we'll make the bag a little longer. Now we do have a bit of a shadow here, so let's put that in, starting with dark, and then layering right next to it something that is slightly lighter, but just slightly. And the thing when working this way is you have to trust. Just gotta trust the thing you're doing will lead to something. Okay, so don't judge it. Don't go, what is this? It looks weird. It looks wonky. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. Okay, you want to trust that it will work out. And if we just get the right value in the right place, again, Stan Miller, the great master, says it a lot, and he's right, then we'll get a beautiful result. So let's start getting all of these different details on the bag, like so. Going around here, going down here, leaving this sliver of a highlight, and then maybe we'll connect through the corner, like that. Now, funny enough, I'm gonna put this orange entirely in the shadow, which I wasn't planning on, but now that I look at it, makes a lot more sense. And leave this sliver of light, go around here, leave a bit of a highlight. Kind of messed up some parts of it, but that's fine. And one more thing I'm gonna change my approach on is for the orange. It's not fully in the light. This area isn't fully in the light. It's actually a little darker. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna mix something that's a little lighter and use that. And we will leave a bit of a highlight because there is one here. I do see it. Let me try this. Get that texture of the orange. There we go. And cover everything else. Okay, it's funny to paint oranges with this kind of a muted blue, but that's art, you know. We paint with whatever we feel like at the moment. And I felt like doing monochromatic, even black and white. And then I decided to take one step further and actually add a bit of something to it. Now, by the way, this isn't fully white here, okay? So I'm gonna already put in kind of a mid value, okay? I don't have to do this really because I'll add some of it later on when I darken this section, but I do feel like I want to put that in now. And then it's going to be all about letting this dry, or maybe we can do some wet and wet. So let's get that transition on the orange. I think the time is good. There's a bit of a sheen there. Let's see what we can produce here. If I just do this, can I get that smooth transition on the right? That's all I care about, because the left I will put a shadow in. And then maybe we can do this. And if it's still wet enough, we could just start putting in some, you know, some paint into this area. If it's still just a little wet even. Because it's very thick, I'm using very thick paint. And then you can take your time and I'm gonna tilt it so it doesn't go into the orange. But you can really take your time and render out the things you see and be a little more careful, a little less careful. But I think that's a good spot to take a break, use a hairdryer, and come back and continue. So this is what we got so far. Now it's only a matter of how can we get this closer to the reference photo in terms of the values. So let's get to it. No need for a lot of talking. I'm just gonna start darkening whatever is necessary. I feel really good about this first wash. Now all that's left is to bring it closer to what we're seeing. So this is much, much darker. This is probably the black of the scene, like the darkest darks. And by painting around that bag, we're gonna leave some of it and it will really be in the shadow. Now, for what you wanna do here, I don't want to do the straw texture, so I'm just gonna use a bit of a wet wash and help that blend towards here. And that's it. And we'll continue downwards, okay? Sometimes I feel like I just want to be productive in the painting I'm working on and finding simple solutions for, you know, complex problems. So let's darken, then make our way. I actually need to lift here. Made a teeny tiny mistake. You know what? That's not even a mistake. Let's continue and I'll show you. So the darkest value I can for this side here, right? And the shadow. But you'll notice what happens now is that the bag looks a little too light. So how are we gonna fix it? We're gonna darken it. How will we do that? We'll come back with something that's still strong but a little wetter. And we won't be scared of touching the edges. Here. See, if you just go about it like that and you're relatively gentle, that touching point, sorry for the chair squeaking all the time, I realize it could be pretty annoying, you'll do well. Okay, now let's get a bit of wet and wet on the shadowy area because there are a few details there that are very interesting. And again, I didn't get the shapes perfectly as they are. It's kind of a combination of the way I see things and idealizing some of the shapes and sometimes just painting them however I want at any given moment, right? You see all of these small creases, and these are actually really important to convey the material. You know, the material which a lot of people wonder about. It's more about the shapes, and they're kind of I don't know if I should call it a shape language, but the shapes themselves and their edges, anything around them, really influences how we perceive an object. So you think it's, you know, the texture comes from maybe dots on it or something like that. No, it's usually just that kind of a very simplistic approach to edges, right? And now I feel like we have to darken this. Okay, so let's go over it, that floor, whatever that is, that surface, because I want to make the bag pop. So this will put it in its place, right? And again, if something's not working, don't beat yourself too hard. Just try and figure out what should I fix here, right? I'm looking at the image in black and white to really see the nuances of the shapes and figure out where I messed up. So sorry, touch the black color here. And so we have this dark shadow under the straw, and that's as many details as I'll put there, because I do want to still have my focal point here in the oranges. So let's start dealing with the oranges and see how it goes, and then we'll figure out if we need to do anything else with anything around it, right? So we have that nice little dark shadow, around the oranges in the middle, which, yes, I will lower that a bit, like that. And I'll be sure to negatively paint around the orange as accurately as I can, because this is what creates its shape, right? The shadow around it. It's darkest here at this point, of course, and then it goes a little lighter as we move outwards. Just a bit more water and paint, move it like that. And here there are a few patterns of light and shadow. I just don't know if I'm interested in them, so we'll kind of do this. Maybe get rid of some of that lighter area, which could be a reflected kind of light, or it could be something else, maybe the transparency of the bag. And then, really important, we're going to connect it to the shadow on the orange itself, okay? Sorry if this video ends up being a little too long, but I do want to show you the entire process, of course. So this goes here, like that. Parts of this shadow are actually quite sharp, but then as it moves down, it gets a little blurrier, so let's get rid of this edge. Okay, now you'll notice how the shadows of the oranges are indeed darker, so we'll do that. Both of these actually, so we can start by working on the one behind. The light and shadow pattern on these is quite subtle, and there's a lot going on there, but I'm going to simplify it for myself and for the viewer. Okay, so this is going to be the orange at the back. Now, let me make some areas stronger so that it's clear. Here, the stem, and in between them. There's a bit of a darkness there. Something like that. You can help it move a bit with a somewhat moist but still quite dry brush. And then we can move on to the main orange, which will need to strengthen that core shadow we put here. Not core shadow, but you see there's this darker section right down the middle, so I put it, and then I'm going to use water to help blend it on both sides, on the right and then on the left, like that. And that's how we get this beautiful, beautiful core shadow, if you will, and reflected light. Okay, and if you want to help things move a bit, you just go spray a bit of water, and that looks good. And once we start working on this shadowy area of the stem, it'll also help put things in context. So we have these beautiful shadows due to the, again, the very nuanced shapes of the orange. And in them, at the heart of them, we have this very dark shadow around the stem. Okay, that'll try getting to look good. Bit of a deep shadow here and there. And hopefully that starts to work. Now, looking at the right section, some parts should be darker, so let's darken them. This should be darker. Go around like that. And then we're gonna help it blend, especially here, but also a bit on the orange. I do see some of that. Some deeper shadows down below, like this. And one thing that bugs me is that this shadow actually continues, this shadow here, it actually continues a bit more. So let's get that in to really show the shape of the orange. I know this part is like untouchable now, I shouldn't touch it in theory, but just needed to make that correction now. You know, sometimes the paint goes in the do not touch it till it dries stage, but I'm okay with that. And taking risks here. Let's make this a little stronger and help it again move with a bit of a moist brush here. Getting close to overwork land. Maybe we're already there, who knows. But I felt like I have to do it. And let's help this lower end here kind of lighten up a bit. Good, we're good. Now I do think maybe I should let it dry a bit. It's not clear enough. I'm gonna let it dry because I want to improve this shadow a lot more. So I'm gonna let most of it dry. This should actually be all in the shadow. Let's do that. Let it dry and then come back. The thing is, you have to understand is I see a lot of things I don't like, but we didn't fail, we just didn't put everything in that was necessary. So this is actually about letting it dry, keeping a cool mind, coming back and making the necessary improvements. Okay, so we'll do that. So we're actually getting close. What I did was take a picture of the painting and turn it black and white just to see where all the mistakes are. Sometimes I find that it's necessary because I don't see them as clearly. So getting used to the, the painting itself, that it's a bit hard to tell. So actually we did really well. So I'm just gonna do a couple of corrections that I noticed. One is, let's get the ground a little darker, bring it into the scene a bit more. It feels like it's a little floaty, kind of floating too much. That's it. Now it looks a little strong, don't worry, it's gonna dry, of course, lighter. Now, the orange. Shadow not clear enough. I'm gonna go over everything we did and put a clearer core shadow, which goes something like, in fact, all of this should be a little darker, but okay, let's do that. Let's do the core shadow thing. So I'm gonna do this. Starting from here, covering this section too. It's just because that's how I see it. Going around there. That's gonna be our core shadow. And then let's blend that edge like that. So that's more like it, a little more connected. Now, well, this part isn't wet, so let's bring out, I actually like the shadow underneath, but let's just help it by putting this bit of a darker spot here and there, just to bring out a better separation between the two oranges, okay? And this is really the moment to not give up, even if you dislike what's on paper. I actually start to like it now. But before that, I was unclear on where I'm headed. This is the moment to not give up and continue, because you're close. You really are close. Now let's fix some of the nuances on the paper bag. So we got a few darker spots there that I want to take care of within the creases and folds and whatnot, but still keeping it quite blended and flowy in some areas. We have a bit of a, lighter, there's just a lot of mid values that we need to put in. So we have this that's kind of slightly darker. We have this that I completely missed, kind of a shadow here. The structure of the paper bag could have been a little better, I'll admit. Didn't do a perfect job at it at all, but that's fine. Now it folds around itself. This entire area is a mid value like that, the way it curves around itself, and then it goes, there's a shadow underneath that. So you see I'm kind of improving its structure. We have a triangular shape here, we have this there, we have a bit of a gradual transition here, we have a bit of a kind of pockety kind of shadow there. This is just final improvements. I think it's starting to look like the thing it's meant to look. I don't know, you let me know in the comments. Hopefully we did a decent job here. There's a bit of a shadow here within the shadow that we'll get with the sharp kind of texture of the bag, going around like that. This goes here, and then we have this kind of a line there, a bit of a shadow here. All of these creases and folds, you see how it starts to improve its surface a bit. Again, this is darker, this is darker, like that. Gotta kill off some of these highlights. And now I think we can put in that main dark spot on the stem. And tackling this one, I knew it's not gonna be a cakewalk really, but I did wanted to give it a try. And now here, I wonder if I should make maybe just this side darker. It's actually close to the accurate value, but I want to improve the sense of this is the focal point. So we'll help the viewers out by adding a bit of a stronger contrast there, like that. There we go. And around here. And around where the bag folds around itself. Getting that, perfect, nuanced pattern on the bag is not an easy thing to do. So here I do feel like I need a better separation between the oranges, so let's do that. Like this, like that, and we'll help that, of course, blend, because it's a rounded shape we're talking about. So coming back with some more water, but mostly paint. And there's a bit of a darker shadow right here. Hopefully this is interesting to see, because I know the process is getting quite long. Yep. And with that, I think we're done. You know, I think we're done. Let me zoom out a bit. So if you look at it from afar, I think the impression is there. There are, of course, a few things to improve, but I really like the way it looks. I feel like, and this is kind of a lesson for us, a better structure in the drawing stage for the paper bag especially will lead to a better result. The paint I'm not so used to, so some of it is behaving a little like something I'm not used to, which is part of it, part of using paint not a lot and then giving it a try. I could bring back, you know, just as we're talking, let me zoom back in, just a bit of a highlight here to further bring out the stem, like that, and some of its base, so you see it popped a bit. A few dots maybe for added texture, because the texture really is dotted. A few sharp highlights here and there, I guess. There is this kind of sharp highlighted shape going into the shadow, but that's definitely not something I want to overdo, and it's not that big of an effect here, to be honest with you. Maybe just a bit of that curving in here and there. But yeah, overall, I'm pleased with this one. I'm gonna sign it and remove the tape. So I don't know why I've been enjoying painting with the white gel pen, doing the signatures with it, but let's remove it. It's funny, for me, I'm so close to the painting, it's hard to tell how off I am, though I do see some things to fix, but overall, I think it's a good, we could darken a whole lot of things, but we don't have to, really. I kind of like the result here. Let me show it to you up close. Maybe I'll also share a picture if I take one later on, and now we can wrap it up. So once again, I hope you enjoyed this one. A couple of notes. The thing about getting a bit of a more tight drawing to start with, that could definitely just make life easier. You know, it's really hard to mess up, as they say, a really good drawing, especially for that paper bag texture, which is quite a challenging subject. I would maybe do a bit more of an analysis of light and shadow, put it in Photoshop, find the main groups of light and shadow, because a lot of areas needed darkening more than I thought they would initially. But again, have that determination and perseverance. Go section by section. Do I need to darken this, or is it okay? Do I need to darken that? Did I darken this too much? Is it too bad that I cannot fix it, or can I darken a few areas and put things in the right context? You know, hopefully that makes sense. I want to thank you for watching. I will encourage you to check out my frustration-free watercolor course. If you're trying to control water too much, you can't let go, really enjoy the process, be sure to check it out. Link in the description. Don't forget to subscribe, like, leave a comment below. All of these things greatly help this video reach more people and help the channel grow. I really do appreciate you watching, and I will see you again in the next video real soon.